Hello and welcome to this interview that is in the series that is all about empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to use the power of food to give us more energy, a body we love, and the zest for life that we all crave. Today, I am so thrilled to introduce you to Terry Tillaart. Terry has a PhD in natural medicine. He's been helping people heal from every health challenge imaginable for the past 15 years and has spoken to thousands of people in over 30 cities on his Cancer, the Fear Ends Here tour. He's also a featured expert in a cancer documentary and several online health symposiums. Thank you so much for being with us today, Terry.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's always great to chat with people from across the other side of the world.
The ocean.
Always good to spread the good information.
Yeah. Terry, let's start with hearing a little bit about your journey and how you came to be doing the work that you do.
Yeah. Long story short, when I was young, life was all about hockey. I grew up in Canada. Yep. So hockey was life. And I was trying to get, that nutritional edge on the sports performance, athletic performance. I took all the courses in school and I really thought I knew about health. I mean, I knew about protein, carbs, and fats. What else was there possibly to know? I saw the food pyramid, I got this. And I used to think it didn't matter if you burned carbohydrates in your exercise, it didn't matter if it came from candy. I mean, those were carbohydrates, right? That's all I needed to know. Yep. Then I read a book from Anthony Robbins, wasn't about health per se, but he had a big chapter on health, all about maximizing your energy and stuff for performance, for a healthy life. So whatever goal you're pursuing, you need some energy to get there. Yep. And he said the exact opposite of everything I thought I had known. And I realized that there was way more to that story. It wasn't an accident that the textbooks and the doctors and the nurses and the teachers, everyone seemed to be giving us the wrong information. And that really set me off on a course for the truth. I just wanted to know the truth. I didn't care what it was, where it was. I was ready to abandon all belief systems. That wasn't a part of my identity. So many people don't want to see the truth because it somehow messes with their identity and it breaks them down. Yeah. I just want to know the truth. I didn't care what it was. I wanted to know. And in that quest around that, in that same chapter of life, if you will, two uncles got cancer, one on each side of the family. One was a Marian, one was, a blood relative, whatever you want to call that. And one of them didn't really care to live. The other one did. And the other one really came to me and approached me once at a family event and said, I know everyone gives you a bad time about, all this health stuff that you bring up, every now and then, but I know that you're the one who's right. Yeah. He said, we don't always want to discipline it, but everything you're saying makes perfect sense. And that makes sense to me. He said, the problem is now that I got cancer, your aunt wants me to go and, just get the cancer under control. And I've got daughters and, I need to go get the cancer under control. It's all I want to do. And he said to me, he said, I know that the poison route's not the way. I know you can't poison your way into health. I can see that very clearly. He said, but now I don't know what to do. What would you do if I were in your shoes? And that was a big question for me at that time because I just wasn't far enough along in the journey to take on the responsibility of saying, listen, I'll walk you through it. And I grew up in a small city. I never heard of a naturopathic doctor. I mean, I heard of chiropractors and massage therapists and maybe sports therapists, but that was like as far that way as I'd ever heard. And so I couldn't even point him to somebody. And that question haunted me because he ended up signing up for just a little bit of chemo to get it under control. And he melted in his footprint and died. And I never saw my aunt happy really pretty much ever since then. I mean, almost 2 decades have gone by and she still cries about the loss, I realized that cancer affects so many people. And I thought to myself, what happens if it's my parents? What happens if it's my siblings? What's my answer to them when they say, okay, Terry, no chemo, no radiation, no surgery, but then what? And I started looking for other cancer experts, Tony Robbins had taught me back in the day that textbooks are not where you learn. The best place to learn anything is to stand on the shoulders of giants and really learn what other people were doing, what got results. There had to be someone else asking these questions throughout history. And there wasn't a lot. There really weren't a lot of cancer experts, but there were plenty enough for me to learn from. And it evolved through that time. And so I just decided at that time, I better become that expert. It's not that my family lived terribly unhealthy, but I didn't fully know exactly all the causative factors of cancer at the time. I wanted to make sure that if they got it, it wasn't me who was going to be sitting there staring at them with a blank look and saying, oh, well, all that health stuff I told you is a nice idea, but we can't do anything for you. That wasn't a comfortable position for me. So I decided to become that expert. And it's always been a passion of mine because there's so many families that just get destroyed by it. It's not just the individuals. There's such collateral damage, if you will. Yeah. And I apologize if I'm speaking too fast to the audience. I get a little impassioned about the subject. And so that set me on the path, basically. And I wanted to know the truth about that for my own personal health, for other families, for my personal family, maybe that someday eventuality. And that kind of got me down the road. And so while it's not always fun dealing with people on this subject, I still have a passion for the subject itself. And that's kept me in long enough, I guess.
Yeah. And you're not talking too fast. I'm well and truly drawn in. It's awesome. And I actually have a close girlfriend who is in stage 4 bone cancer at the moment. And she comes from a very different way of thinking than I do. But she did talk to her doctor about doing something a bit differently, and they just absolutely shut her down. You go that way, it's our way, and if you choose something different, don't bother coming back here. And I was horrified by that idea, that approach. It's so disempowering. It's awful.
Yeah. And the challenge is, over the years I've befriended lots of medical doctors myself. Some of them are close personal friends, and yeah. They are a product of their training. It's not that they're bad people. They're super nice. Some of them are the nicest people I know. Yeah. They have great intentions and they really care about the people. Mm-hmm. But the school they went to is more about brainwashing than it was about education. And it would really prime them. Carolyn Dean said it best. She's an MD, ND. And eventually she went to medical school wanting to help people. When she graduated, she realized she couldn't, so she went down the naturopathic route. And she said, listen, I went to med school. For 2 years, I studied diseases and labels. And the other 2 years, I studied diseases to match those. I studied drugs to match those disease labels. And then we graduated. The end. Yeah. There's more nutrition education on the back of a postage stamp than you could fit in school. And in fact, they're not told in these direct terms, but if you read between the lines, their indoctrination program leaves them with conclusions like this. We don't know where disease comes from. Chemicals have no bearing on disease and illness. That's wildly untrue, of course. The idea of air, water filtration, clean bed, clean living, chemical-free living, chemical-free personal care products, that idea has never even dawned on them. In fact, they believe that injecting chemicals is the path to health. Yeah. And doling out chemicals in boxes and bottles is the path to health. That's their modus operandi. Their tests cause disease. The drugs cause diseases. Heart drugs cause heart disease. Osteoporosis drugs cause osteoporosis. Cancer treatments cause cancer. The dermatologist knows the least about skin, ironically, which is so weird. She'll tell you to avoid the sun, even though I've written extensive studies and papers on this, where the lack of sunshine is what causes skin cancer, not the opposite. And so on and so forth. So the exact opposite indoctrination of the things that cause health, the things that cause disease, has been completely inverted on them. Yeah. And now if someone comes in to ask them questions, 2 things come into play. And my friends have shared this with me. They say, well, some of us are close to retirement and we have no way to replace the income. We're not legally allowed to talk about anything else. And we've got zero training on anything else. Let's face it. So what am I going to replace my income with? What am I going to pay back those student loans with? What are the options? I'm nearing retirement. I'm not ready to retire. So now what do I do? Yeah. And for some of them, it's a big ego bruise. The patient comes in and asks questions for which they have no answers. They would just rather shut the entire conversation down than be humble and say, I'm not saying it's wrong. I don't know much about that. I've read a few articles. I know there's something to it. You may need to go talk to somebody else about that. This is not something I know about. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I have no training in that. Yeah. And the other thing I've learned by hanging around with lots of other health professionals is they take what they learn in the textbook as gospel. I don't know, none of my friends who do it, and I've got many, I'm not trying to single anybody out, and it's not a personal agenda with them. I don't know any of them who read studies. They don't read any studies at all except for what the pharmaceutical reps bring them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they've ever been on PubMed. I'm not sure they know where to find some of it sometimes. I send them studies and it seems like a foreign idea to them. Because when I talk about my world of things and they say, well, you know, we got arthritis and all stuff, I'm like, well, have you seen some of the simple studies on fruits and vegetables? And I send them a few studies and it's like, that's a novel idea for them. Like, oh, I don't know. It's a medical condition. We got to manage it with drugs.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about the idea that the whole problem was caught on the end of a fork? You know? They say, well, you know, this is contagious. I'm like, you're right. It is contagious. It's caught on the end of forks. Yeah.
I love so. I'm quite happy to talk about fruit and veg. So let's. I want to go back to something you said right at the beginning. Was when you had to discover what it was to give you more energy, how to boost our bodies, our little battery packs, our mitochondria. How do we feed them and get this elusive energy that us mums are all craving?
Yeah, well, and there's a technical, complicated answer to that, you know, that we could easily go into, but the basics are simple. The fundamentals of health have never changed for thousands of years, and they won't change 10,000 years from now, no matter what fad book or fad diet comes out. Fruits and vegetables are the health foods for humans.
Yep.
Period. It won't change. And for all of these other things that we want to eat or we're exposed to, or the variety that we crave and all that stuff, that's all human. You know, I don't teach living perfect. I teach living perfectly objective first, and then deciding what you'll live with.
Yep.
You know, BSing yourself gets you nowhere. It never serves you. Like it sounds so cliche to say the truth sets you free, but it does.
Yeah.
If you learn to see all the nuts, beans, seeds, grains, legumes, sprouts, all that stuff as the condiments in life, and realize that the sustenance comes from fruits and vegetables, and those things are texturals and different, you know, you're trying to get some variety out of all that stuff, and you're creating sauces and spices to make it different in some way, but that the diet still fundamentally rests on fruits and vegetables, you're going to find a world of energy that you don't have. And people say, oh, it can't be that simple. Yeah, it can. The average grocery cart only has 5% of the cart as fresh produce, and ketchup is a part of that 5%. You can't make this up. And so people say, no, I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. What's a lot? More than great grandpappy? More than your friends who are junk food eaters? More than who? More relative to what?
Yeah.
Studies show that 5% of the grocery cart is that. So why don't we just at least start with those fundamentals? Like, there's lots of other important elements to health, but why don't we at least start with those things? And you can't tell me the straight face that you are, because I know people tell me they look good, and if I had a secret camera in the grocery cart, when I walk through the grocery store, I'm amazed how many people are still alive in there. You know, I am. I look around like, whoa. And I know that my grocery cart is different than the people who are claiming that they're eating healthy, because the grocery clerks are always like, oh, are you doing one of those cleanses? Are you doing one of those things? No. This is how I always eat. You know? So I know that they're just like, oh, what is this? That's all the evidence I needed to know that lots of people are fibbing about what's really in the grocery cart.
Yeah. So when I've got this passion about taking what heals our body and actually using that every day, as opposed to just jumping on board when we get sick. So when you look at treating people with all sorts of different chronic ill health, be it cancer or autoimmune diseases or whatever, at the moment, diabetes, obesity, they all fall under this umbrella. Where does diet come into healing, and how do we use that preventative health? Are you still saying, and I know I'm leading.
No, lead away.
I'm leading, I know. But, are we talking about vegetable as a prescription? That's our drug. That's our magic pill.
Well, fruits and vegetables are like drugs in a way. If you want to measure drugs by looking at one biomarker in a test to see whether it went up or whether it went down, whether it was modifiable by something you consume. So instead of trying to modify it with a pill, it is modifiable. Very much so. I can't name a single fruit or vegetable that I can't go find a study on proving that they do modify those exact same parameters, those same biomarkers that the drugs and doctors are testing for.
Yeah.
So if you've got inflammation, yes, there's 1,000 other things you can and should do. I have an extreme pain program. It goes far beyond diet and food. But, are you going to beat eating berries and cherries and grapes and all this stuff? Like, good luck on beating that. Those things will do more for you than any drug ever will.
Yeah.
And so there's no matter the health problem, the first conversation I always tell people is, before you call me and spend your hard-earned money, don't call me expecting that I'm going to offer you a magic pill or 3 magic pills. There is no substitute for the fundamentals. Yeah. Most certainly not for diet. But I also take the conversation further than that. I do very much believe that chemical exposures are causing us very, very serious problems. Environmental pollution is a real illness. All these chemicals like BPA and phthalates and all this, they are extremely toxic at trace amounts, at tiny trace amounts. Fluoride is very toxic in trace amounts. Chlorine, very toxic, trace amounts. Lead, arsenic, all this stuff. This stuff's in your mattress. You spend 1/3 of your life in your bed and you don't pay attention to what you're sleeping on. And meanwhile, your mattress is filled with roach killer and all these other ridiculous chemicals, proving that they're off-gassing while you're sleeping. You spend 1/3 of your life there. The average woman's putting something in the neighborhood of 800 chemicals on her face alone during a day. Yeah, and with no clue what's in the ingredients. And we just talked about that all these things are very damaging at trace levels. Yeah. Why I can't exclude that conversation of get all the chemicals out of your life. When we renovate a room in the house, it's Green Guard building materials that come in. I'm not taking any of that for granted. You're either going to filter your air or you're going to be the filter. You're either going to filter your water, where there's potentially 80,000 different chemicals in it, or you're going to be the filter. There's no in between. You are, or you are doing it. Yeah. So, I always talk about chemical-free living. I think that's huge. If you want better health and better energy, you can't replace hydration. There is no substitute for hydration. 2% hydration will get rid of more than 20% of your energy, and right quick and near instantly. So, but I also believe in clean, proper hydration, not water filled full of pharmaceuticals and all kinds of chemicals, right? Yeah, right. I'm all about water, all about it. So hydration's huge if you want energy, but so is sleep. So are healthy relationships. So is low stress. So are all these things. And then if you have a dysfunctional liver or spleen or kidneys and other organ dysfunctions or vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and there's all these things that you can look at, and they're all a part of health, and they're all a part of that good energy, feel great equation, preventing diseases in the long run. That's all part of that equation. But the one thing that people don't want to talk about is the diet. Again, there's no skipping it. There's nothing I can give you that will skip or replace a shitty diet. Nothing. Ask any person who's working out hard in the gym. You can't out-train a bad diet. It'll help, but it doesn't work. You can't do it. You want abs someday? Abs are made in the kitchen. They're not made in the gym. Yeah, you get the firming and the toning in the gym, but all that extra goop that's around your midsection and on your ass that you don't like is going to come in the kitchen. You're going to firm up your bum in the gym, but you're not going to get rid of all that extra stuff on there. That's going to go away in the kitchen. Yeah. On all these health problems. If people could reframe the way they think about illness and stop thinking of it as disease spelt the way we've been conditioned and learn to spell it dis-ease, the body out of ease, And then people say, well, I don't like my disease anymore. And I say, well, then maybe you should start eating in a way that puts your body at ease. The easiest foods on digestion are going to be the fastest path to getting back into ease. Easy on digestion, easy on the body. Body's got a finite amount of energy and resources. It's either going to spend it on digestion, and if you're eating indigestible foods, you're gonna just waste all your energy trying to digest, so you're gonna eat things that are super easy. You know? So you can't escape those things.
To give people, so break it down into one thing that will give people a bit more of a picture. Let's look at diabetes, because I mean, nobody doesn't know somebody with type 2 diabetes now. It's just so rampant. Yep. I think we've got 280 people diagnosed every single day in Australia at the moment with type 2 diabetes. So when we're looking at feeding our bodies and feeding our children, how are we as a culture, an American, Canadian, Australian culture, we're all, on this same sad diet. How are we feeding ourselves into that picture? How is that happening?
Well, the first problem for most people is the real food conversation. First you've got to, everything starts at real food. We can debate all day about high fat, low fat, different food sources and stuff, but first it's real food. That has to be the first thing. If it came from a factory or a lab and it's highly processed in some way or any way, including plant-based oils, that's still a processed food. Olives are much healthier for you than olive oil. There's a reason why that thing never dies on the shelf. Okay, people have to question that. If it doesn't die, it will probably kill you. If it dies, it's probably good for you. Just good, simple, common sense, logical principles. So it's got to be real food. If 2% of your diet comes from a can and it's like, or a jar, and it's because you're opening an organic tomato sauce in a glass jar on occasion because you're in a rush, we can let that slide. Okay, that's not the kind of stuff that we're concerned about. The things that have labels and commercials and advertising dollars in them and come in all forms of packages, when that's your diet, expect problems. We're talking about processed sugar, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, Splenda, all this stuff that's in all of this garbage. To eat that stuff and expect no problems is literally the definition of insanity. That is not real food. That doesn't come in nature. No other species ate that. Your ancestors most certainly didn't eat that. And so we have to start there. That has to be the first starting point of all real food. And there aren't too many people on real food getting diabetes. It's certainly less prevalent. Everything else, if there's all distinctions we can get into, we can touch on them if you want or not. That's up to you. But it has to start with real food. That has to be the first principle.
Yeah.
And diabetes, exercise, not exercising and not expecting diabetes is insanity. Like diabetes can be solved so easily with physical activity.
So
if they were exercising alone, very few people would have diabetes.
So can you explain that link for us? What is the effect of exercise in reducing our chances of getting diabetes? What is the actual link there?
Well, there are a lot of links. Science will never catch up to all of the links even. I think that's the first thing that people just need to come to acceptance with. That thousands of different chemical cascades are going on constantly in the body as is, but especially when you're exercising, think about when you're doing a really intense workout or playing a really intense sport. How does your body figure out all the mechanics to signal the fire, to get the fuel to the cells, and when you're overexerting yourself, it's doing all these things, but it's also using up all the glucose stores, it's burning all the fat stores, it's got to use up all the storage in the liver, and then your body's got to go elsewhere for the fuel. There's so many things happening, but more importantly, I wish people just think about their body in this way. You've got a lymphatic system. You and I need to go to the bathroom. We have to eliminate some of our plumbing. If we don't fix the plumbing issue, we're going to have very real problems. but we're made up of trillions of cells. So all those little guys, they also go to the bathroom. Those little mini versions of us still have to eliminate waste. And they're eliminating waste in your lymphatic system, which is twice the size of your blood vessel network, which wraps around the equator multiple times. So we're talking about an enormous system. And that waste, that lymphatic system has no pump. There's no pump at all. And so the only pump that it has is continual muscle flexion. So it's like taking an old tube of toothpaste, the toothpaste at the back, you can squeeze the back, you squeeze a little further, squeeze a little further, squeeze a little further to get it up. That's your muscle flexion squeezing all that garbage in your body to eventually move the waste out into somewhere.
Yeah.
And so if that wasn't reason enough to exercise, I don't know what else would be. I mean, that alone is very compelling reason that you're just choking in your own waste if you're not exercising.
That just paints the best picture. I love it.
It's exactly true. Like there's only 4 ways your body can eliminate garbage. It's going to respirate, which you only get rid of so much by respirating. It's going to perspirate it out. Well, how do we perspire usually? Oh, exercise. We sweat it out, and you urinate and you defecate. But all the stuff has to eventually get to the center of the plumbing.
Yep.
And to find its way out. And it requires muscle flexion to do that. So exercise is huge, and it's almost impossible to be exercising and have diabetes. It can be done if your diet is really incorrect, but there's not a lot of people that would. It would dramatically cut those numbers down wildly if people just exercised.
Yep.
Sunshine's important, drinking water is important, eating right's important, all that stuff. But diabetes should be just such a non-issue. Type 1 or type 2. Now, type 1's more complicated, but it's a totally solvable problem, despite the fact that no one wants to hear that. But type 2, fix it in a weekend. Fix it in a weekend. Why are people taking dangerous insulin and dangerous diabetes drugs and something I could solve in a weekend?
Yeah.
But diabetes fundamentally is still caught at the end of forks.
Yeah.
It's contagious, all right. Very contagious.
I love it. Okay, let's talk getting that body we love. Exercise is, we know we've got to move to get that shape, but the kilos all come down to what we're putting on the end of our fork, doesn't it? So why, we know this stuff, why are we all still struggling with endless rounds of diets and the next fad and the next thing how do we get this sorted, Terry?
Well, that's a complicated question, but I think you touched on it really well earlier. One of the fundamental things is people need to see their whole life and their health as an investment, not as an expense, not as an afterthought, not as a thing I'm only going to fix when I'm broken. I don't want to wait till I have cancer to do something when I can prevent it. I don't want to wait till I have diabetes. I want quality of life. I'm not here on this planet to live forever. I don't care about living forever. Everyone can come up with a list of 1,000 reasons why you don't want to live forever. But I want quality while I'm here. Go to almost any social function, family function, private place, restaurant, whatever. Almost nobody over 50 can walk. They waddle. They're waddling and hobbling and moaning and groaning. And over 50% of men over the age of 40 can't get an erection anymore. Like something is wrong. And I don't want to live that quality of life. I don't know any men who are satisfied living without erections for starters, but this idea of hobbling and bobbling around and moaning and groaning and every conversation is one-upsmanship with each other about who's got bigger problems.
Yeah.
It's about quality of life. And so if you see living healthy as a lifestyle, not as a diet, not as a fad, not as some corrective measure, but as a lifestyle that you embrace, not that you live perfectly, but you do mostly right things most of the time. That's usually good enough for most people. Do mostly right things most of the time because that's just a lifestyle choice because you want to be healthy at 80. And healthy at 80 starts at 30. It starts before then. In fact, studies show that when they examine 10-year-olds closely, they already have heart disease. They're not having heart attacks and strokes, but they already have all kinds of atherosclerotic plaque and damage in their arteries. They already have heart disease by the age of 10. So eating healthy at 20 and 30 is not about preventing heart disease. It's about healing the heart disease you already got.
Jeez.
And so we think that we're immune and that we can just get away with things because everyone's heard the George Burns story and people want to pretend that there's no correlation with their choices and how they live. It's not true. Yeah. The previous generations grew up without chemicals. They grew up without processed foods. They grew up without vaccinations in their formative years. And epigenetic studies have shown that what happens in your formative years, even within the womb, has a huge long-term trajectory. And so those previous George Burns generations we heard about, anyone trying that today, living in all these chemicals, all the processed foods, all the vaccinations, all these other unnatural living things that humans are doing, they don't stand a chance. They won't be the next George Burns. They're going to be the next fatality that their parents are going to bury. Mm. And who wants to put that burden on their family?
Yeah.
And I apologize, I'm getting circular here, but I think that the reason why the people struggle with weight and the diet and the body and the energy is because it's always looking for the next fad, the next magic pill, the next corrective measure when an emergency is going off. Yeah. I so rarely get calls outside of emergency. Almost everyone who calls me is in absolute emergency. Everything's broken. Everything in their body is broken. And that's when they call. And they say, oh, and by the way, I'm also overweight and I want to deal with that too. Oh, and they say, what do you think? Do you think that my obesity has anything to do with some of my other health problems? No, of course. Yeah. But if you change that mindset, and I'll add one more thing I think is so important. It comes down to self-love. A self-loving person makes a lot of consistent self-loving actions and choices. A self-loving person also loves himself enough to say, it's okay to have fun. It's okay to let loose. That's also an act of self-love because life has got to still be fun. If it's boring, who the hell wants to be here? But it's okay. It's a self-loving thing to say, I'm going to make the self-loving choice. I'm going to have watermelon for breakfast. That's a self-loving choice. And it's not so bad. Who doesn't love watermelon? Like it's so simple. What are we overcomplicating this for? I'm gonna have one meal a day that's a salad if that's your thing. Okay, that's a self-loving act, but make it the meal, not the little snack before you have the big heavy hunkin' whatever it is you're eating, and then the dessert, and then the cakes and the pies and fill up on the salad. Do the self-loving thing. Yeah. Right. So it always boils down to self-love. What does somebody subconsciously believe they deserve? What do they subconsciously believe they deserve? If you inherently, secretly, the things that you don't vocalize and verbalize, inherently feel guilty about things in your past, whether it was some perceived religious indiscretion or some other, whatever, all these little things in life, maybe just a poor error in judgment when you were younger, that you kind of made the wrong choice and you may have hurt some people in the process. You hold on to all these guilty things. You don't believe that you're worthy of having your best life, your best body, your best energy. You don't believe that you're worthy of being sexy. Some people have all this self-conscious stuff about feeling sexy. Maybe they had a bad episode as a child or when they were young where being a sexual object or something, being sexualized in some way left them feeling bad. So now subconsciously, even though it's not about sex in this chapter of their life, they're sabotaging. It's just constant sabotaging because they're trying to avoid this stuff over here. But it comes down to subconsciously, what do you believe you deserve? And, where's your self-love? I have this 10-hour weight loss program and I go through a lot of psychology stuff and I ask people, write down an honest list, make it reasonable. Write down an honest list of all the reasons why you don't deserve to be fit and healthy and sexy and full of energy and living your best life. Like write down a really good list of why you don't deserve it. Nobody can write down a good list. When they start writing it down, they read it. Well, that time when I was 7, I'm 37 now. What the hell am I when I was 7? What has that got to do with anything? Well, that time when and there's never a good answer for it. And when people get back to that self-loving thing and they start adopting self-loving rituals, as a practice, and that becomes a part of their lifestyle, and it's just a lifestyle choice. They start changing their identity metaphors. Like, I am a fit person. Fitness is a part of my life. It's not something I do when I'm feeling fat and sloppy and my jeans don't fit. It's a part of who I am. I am a healthy eater. I'm not trying to compete with winning the world's healthiest competition. So many of these online social media groups, it becomes a new religion for them. And it becomes their entire identity metaphor. And you may have had a very bad taste in your mouth from those people. You don't need to be one, but you can still say, listen, I'm a self-loving person. I deserve good. I want a good life. I want good energy. I want to be here for my kids. I don't want to become a dependent on somebody. When you decide, I'm never going to be a dependent on somebody. I'm not going to be a burden to my parents or my spouse or any of that stuff. My spouse is never going to change my diapers. My spouse is not going to be having to do these things because I'm abusing my body. That's not a burden. I don't have the right to place that burden on somebody else. That's so selfish. Yeah. It's so selfish not to take care of your health. I met an author years ago who said, like he said it best, him and his wife had an agreement. He said, my commitment to you is I will take care of me for you if you take care of you for me. Right? What kind of a partner are you going to be in your life when you're always tired? Hey, honey, we should unplug from all of our crazy world and turn off our phones and watch a movie together. And then the movie starts, and 10 minutes later, sleeping on the couch. Wow, some partner you are, Hey, honey, we should go for a hike. I can't, my arthritis, my thing. Like all the quality of life. If your partner wanted one of those partners with all of those problems, they could have easily chosen someone like that. There's lots of people out there. But they chose you when you were lean and thin and vibrant and had energy and were excited to be in the world and excited to share experiences with them. If they picked you when you were in that chapter, it's because that's the kind of partner they wanted all along. And it's very unfair and selfish not to give them that. It's like the proverbial, and I'm not trying to pick on women because men do this all the time too, but men, women, whatever. It's the proverbial, you get married and literally within 6 months, they gain enormous amounts of weight. Both men and women do this, that they never lose, and they just keep packing it on. If your husband or wife wanted an obese partner, they could have picked one. That's not what they signed on for. And I know it sounds trivial, but it's not just about the physicality. It's all the other quality of life things that are going to come with it.
Yeah.
And when your kids are 10 years old and the husband has a heart attack at the age of 41 and leaves her as a widow, what excuse are you going to have? What cheeseburger tasted better than leaving your kids fatherless? Like, nothing tastes as good as healthy feels at the end of the day anyway. And so, I could go on, and I should pause. I'm ranting, and I apologize. I get excited about it, and because it just doesn't make any sense to me. We all zig and zag. I've been off course just like anybody else with my health and fitness. But I never go that far off, and I'll always correct it because it's a lifestyle that I've just chosen,
And it's, I just think about what do we make being adults look like to our kids? If being an adult looks like being exhausted and grumpy and tired and, popping one pill to fix this and then popping another pill to fix the side effects of the last pill, and what is it? We're not making being an adult look very attractive. If that's a picture we're painting.
Well, and a friend of mine worded it this way to me. He said, the subconscious mind's like a photocopier enlarger machine. And any quantum physics, I love quantum physics. If you study quantum physics, you realize that the baby's subconscious mind runs about 99% of everyone's life already. Even the most consciously aware adult, at least 95% of their life is being run by the subconscious. For most people, I think it's about 110%. For every child under the age of 7, it is like 100%. They're literally, their brainwaves measure in the subconscious state at all times.
Yeah. And
so there is nothing that escapes their awareness that isn't getting programmed into the computer. Nothing. Like nothing. It's all, the Jesuits said, give me the child until the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. Yeah. They knew exactly what they were talking about. And so you're going to subconsciously show the child that, either he's teaching him self-love and you're teaching him some reasonable level of discipline and some reasonable good rituals, or you're doing the exact opposite. But you're programming them for failure. You're practically guaranteeing their failure.
Yeah.
What do you think they are watching and recording and seeing? The subconscious is going to run their entire life. And you want to show them nonstop body abuse? Like, it's just nonstop body abuse. It's okay to show them to have fun in a celebratory way. It's okay to have date nights. It's okay to do those things. Okay to go out sometimes. But to show them nonstop ritual body abuse, and expect that they're going to grow up and not have ritual body abuse when 95% of their life is run by their subconscious. It's closer to 99, if we're being honest. What are we expecting? It's, you are setting an example like crazy. And the only thing I'll say to people is, like, never mind beating yourself up about that. It's not too late to set a brand new one. Yeah. How about a woman right now who, was well into the 200s and she's committed to getting back into a bikini for the first time in her life in several decades. And she's got a lot of weight to lose to get to that place where she's proud and comfortable, 85 plus pounds. But now she's showing her daughter, explaining to her, I'm like, if you need to get leverage on yourself, use your daughter as the leverage for how you get there. Because you programmed her to ruin her. You already programmed her to have the worst life imaginable. And she's not going to get away with what you got away with. Every generation's getting away with less because they're poisoned so much more in those gestational years, like I talked about. But now you can show her rituals of self-love nonstop, rituals of exercise, rituals of self-love, rituals of eating healthy, and you can reprogram her and you can get her on board. Yeah. And you can show her, and that's going to be better than telling her. It's like the woman smoking, drinking shots, saying, you shouldn't smoke. You're that person. If you're the obese ritual body abuser, you're that person to the child. You've got to look in your mirror honestly. Yeah. One last thing. Tony Robbins says that you got to be the leader of your own life, and leaders have 3 core qualities. They see life as it is, exactly as it is, not better, not worse. They make a plan for how they want it to be, and then a plan to close the gap. So you're the leader in your family. If you're an adult and you have children, be a leader. Start seeing things in reality with who you are. You're the haggard old person in the wheelchair smoking and drinking, telling them not to abuse themselves. And maybe some of those reframes give you to think about it differently, get a little leverage on yourself and say, wow, that's not who I want to be.
Yeah. And giving kids the gift of watching us take back control, turning things around, actually taking responsibility for our health. That's a pretty powerful gift, because it's easy to see something that's going right all the time. But then if you see somebody that's actually taking on board, making changes to make things better, that's a lesson that's easier to watch, I reckon.
It's powerful. It's so powerful. Yeah. You have the chance to give them the greatest gift. And I love the word responsibility that you use.
Yeah.
When you start blaming and saying, well, it's just that I got this disease, I caught it. Yeah, always implying, everyone's language always implies like it's something they caught. Yeah. They say, I'm healthy except for this cancer. I'm healthy except for this heart attack. No. You have the cancer. You have the diabetes. You have the Crohn's, the colitis, the IBS. You have all of that because you are sick. Yeah. You're not sick because you have that. You have that because you're sick. It's a reframe. And all that language of diseases out there, and I'm a victim, and I just need to get a magic pill, and if I just have the right, I just pop this pill for this and pop that. That's teaching people no responsibility. But at the end of the day, your life is always going to be 1,000% your responsibility. And the sooner a kid learns to own that, the better their life's going to be.
Yeah. That is perfect. That is perfect. I'm so reluctant to wind this up, but I have to. Because they're going to be 45 minutes, Terry, and I'll get all sorts of letters saying I didn't fit it all in. So I hope that we can do this again, because it's fantastic. And I know there's so much more that we can talk about. But for this time, I know that you have a gift for those that have tuned in to this series. Would you like to tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, by the way. And sorry if I ranted and got off track. I'm excited.
Don't apologize.
I'm excited. Love to do it again anytime you want to. In terms of a free gift, we're talking about energy and body types and getting that perfect body and getting getting that body that you want. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm not saying my way is the only way, but I have won international weight loss competitions with my weight loss program, with thousands of people from all the countries in the world. And ironically, I told the participant that won that I would guarantee the win literally ahead of time, because I was positive she would win as long as she, really stuck to it. So people have to make changes. There's no magic. It's not some magic pill deal. But if you want to learn how to eat right for proper energy and for losing weight and gaining health at the same time. So many of these fad diets are about losing a few pounds to fit in the dress on Saturday at the expense of your health. And it's not that. And so I'd love to offer your listeners a discount code. So we'll just call it Edwina 15, and I will get it ready for you guys. And it'll probably only be available for a short period of time. And but I'll get all the tech gurus to teach me how to set that up before this call airs. But I'd love to offer it to anyone who's watching this, because it seems to make that's a group of people committed to getting their best life and their best body and all that stuff. So I'd like to contribute in that way if I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I've just loved this interview, and I look forward to hopefully doing it again one day.
Perfect. Well, likewise, Edwina, you've been fantastic. Reach out anytime. Love to also reach out on a personal level. Love to remain friends and keep in contact. And if there's any way I can serve you or your audience in a future interview, let me know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right.
Have a great day. Take care. Bye.